Here's Elias's crotch if you're not interested in hearing the synopsis. There's 2 parts of this video going on, so you can pick whichever flavor you want. It's really 2 videos in one. Welcome to another reading vlog. For this month, I'm going to be talking about 4 books that I read in the beginning of the new year, where you'll follow me hanging out with friends around the Bay Area and then also flying over to see Elias in LA. So I basically just bounced between the top and the bottom of California. And in the midst of it, I read a great variety of books. 2 of them were 5 stars and 4 stars. So we're already starting the new year off with a strong beginning. Something that I'm also practicing within the new year is taking care of my hair. And that's why I'm glad Briogeo is the sponsor of today's video. I recently got a bunch of products from them and I'm super excited to support them. They're woman-owned, they're Black-owned, they're eco-conscious, they don't use any harmful ingredients. So the first product that I got is the Don't Despair Repair Deep Conditioning Hair Mask. I have very dry, damaged hair, so this has been really great in just balancing my protein and moisture, and it is scientifically proven to decrease hair breakage after 2 uses. Every time I bleach my hair and I use this after, I feel a lot better about messing around with my hair, knowing that this is gonna take care of it. I also got the Scalp Revival Exfoliating Shampoo. This is meant to cleanse, detoxify, and hydrate your scalp because healthy hair starts at the scalp. And when I'm constantly putting bleach on my scalp, that makes my skin really sensitive, and this has just helped. Also, every now and then I get dandruff, so this is where the Scalp Revival Dandruff Relief Shampoo has been useful for me. If you click on the link, you can get 15% off of your Briogeo order. Type in the code WithCindy15 and then you'll get your discount. So thanks to Briogeo for sponsoring this video, and let's work on bettering ourselves this year with clean hair. I am starting the new year off in my healing era because already in the year of 2023, my very first book is Be Not Afraid of Love, and it ended up being a 5-star book. It was so healing and tender and nourishing. It felt like a warm embrace. I don't really know what to categorize this because it is nonfiction. Some of it is kind of like a memoir, some of it is kind of like self-help, and then a lot of it actually reminded me of bell hooks. The author themselves has quoted bell hooks among tons of other queer philosophers and activists, and they've compiled together these series of thoughts or manifestos that they have formed about love. These are learnings that they've had to make after experiencing an abusive relationship. The abuse left them lonely and broken and a whole whirlwind of emotions, but they had to relearn what love means. Not just romantic love, but also the love that you would have for a community or for yourself or just for the world in general. It gets very philosophical and spiritual, which I usually am not into that kind of woo-woo stuff. But what I have noticed every time I read a book by someone who is spiritual, I can tell that they are very centered within themselves. They're very present. They seem to have their shit together, and that is a quality that I want to have. I was able to relate a lot to the emotions that the author has felt from dealing with their relationship. A lot of what they dealt with in the aftermath, I sympathize a lot with. It could be triggering for those who have had experience, so that is a warning there, but you're able to read it. I think the fact that this author has been through so much shit but has been able to heal through all of that makes me more inclined to believe that I am capable of healing as well. I gotta see another traumatized bitch in order for me to feel like I can be on the same boat. I really liked how the beginning of the book dives into a lot of the emotions that I feel like I and most other people would normally try to get away from. Feelings like anger or numbness or anxiety or grief. I have always tried to run away from it or saw it as a sign of failure. My way of trying to cope with it was just compartmentalizing it or ignoring it and just busying myself. But I'm finding that through my recent therapy sessions that I want to feel things more deeply. By resisting all of my negative emotions and feelings, I was also doling out the more positive emotions and love from filling into my life. Now I'm at this point, again, because I'm in my healing era, where I want to fill my life with as much love and compassion as possible. This is my live, love, laugh moment, and I don't care if this is cheesy as fuck because I gotta do this shit or I will literally not survive. I really appreciate that this book dives into these feelings and emotions and how they're helpful for you. It's made me reflect on my own emotions as well and how they can benefit you and protect you. Here are a few quotes that I really enjoyed. To access my full loving being, I needed to sit with my suffering. While Buddhism exposed all my fears, it also shed light on the parts of me that cared, wanted to survive, and still hoped to embody and experience love. Sitting with my feelings led me journey toward embodied loving, interdependence, opening, healing, and becoming. When I allowed myself the fullness of my feelings, I was no longer afraid of them, and I was able to see the impermanence of my fears. There's another quote where the author talks about how after they separated from their abusive partner, they were dealing with a lot of numbness. They didn't want to bother their friends or drag them down. I felt like a bruised burden, and in my refusal to become a victim, I neglected the tenderness of being a survivor, which I think really speaks a lot to why it's so important to sit with your feelings and process everything instead of compartmentalizing it. So I've been practicing doing that in therapy and in general, and I'm just being a reflective, meditative bitch. By shielding myself from my feelings, I thought that I was protecting myself. My feelings were not my enemy, and they were not what I needed protection from. When I make enemies out of my emotions, I push them further into forbidden unknowns, neglecting the crucial wisdoms that reveal my wholeness. They make a lot of references to other authors. One of them is Ocean Vuong, so for all my poetry bitches out there, you might be into this as well. He wrote, "Too much joy is lost in our desperation to keep it." To which the author, Mimi Zhu, expands, "If we befriend only what feels good, we alienate or hurt. When we are judged by others and ourselves for weeping about separation, heartbreak, trauma, tragedies, accidents, and death, we push vital parts of ourselves away. The binaries of good and evil categorize our difficult feelings as evil and our happy feelings as good. When sorrow is seen with self-judgment, it can generate a great sense of fragmentation within. Suppressing our sadness can grow into a cruel cynicism, making us scared of our own feelings and doubtful of the fullness of life." And this is where the author connects it back to being part of nature and earth. And while I usually do not subscribe to that kind of stuff because I feel like it's kind of hippie, once they made that connection to the way that we treated indigenous communities and the impacts of that in our infrastructure and societal culture, that was where it really clicked for me. To appreciate Earth and her many sacred connections, we must honor the indigenous communities of the land. Indigenous people are the original caretakers of Earth and know what it means to be in an interdependent and reciprocal relationship with the planet. A huge reason we might feel so disconnected, fragmented, and confused about climate change on Earth is because still to this day, indigenous communities are being violently displaced, erased, and silenced. Capitalism depreciates living beings as resources for extraction, and people are taught to see land as property for development. To experience true presence with miraculous Earth, we must remember why we feel so disconnected in the first place. Land is a sacred being we are in communion with, and we need to urgently shift our misguided ideas that regard land as property. We must be committed to giving land back to indigenous communities and urgently fight for indigenous sovereignty. And then they go into talking about how they would spend a long time sitting with plants and with trees and with fruits and just really observe everything and be present with the world around them. It's something that is so unnatural to me, but I get it now. Like, I understand the vision. I understand the way that it can be healing, because so much of the problems that we do have are influenced by patriarchy and capitalism and other structures that humans invented for their own profit and greed. And I think we get so caught up in that it messes up our priorities in life. And I think it's interesting that the author makes a point for how they were able to connect with themselves and the world more deeply by turning to the way that nature operates rather than how our societal structures expect us to operate. Like how in nature, everything is very cyclical and interconnected. I think that's an interesting metaphorical framework. Out of all the hippy-dippy books that I've been reading, I think this one is the closest case to making me believe it. Overall, this book encourages me to feel things more deeply as I continue to heal my mentally ill brain. Live, love, laugh, bitches. That's the motto we're going with now. I'll see you next time for the next book. Hello, I am updating from Los Angeles because I am currently at Elias's place. We are gonna go to a concert in literally a few minutes. He's cutting his t-shirt and I'm here to update you on a book that I am pretty much exactly halfway through right now. It is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This is a book that seems to have just gotten so much hype. The travelers that came with me to Thailand, well, for both groups, we started a book club. So for this month, I'm gonna be talking about both of the books books that I'm reading for each book club. But for the culinary themed itinerary that the first group went on, the book that we picked is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. The premise of this is that it takes place starting from the 1980s all the way to the early 2000s. Starting off in the 80s, two kids meet in a hospital gaming room. The main guy is a kid who's recovering from a car crash, and ever since the accident, he hasn't really spoken to anyone, and he's just been isolating himself and playing video games in the gaming room. And then the main girl is someone who is just visiting her sister who's dealing with cancer, and they strike up this friendship. But they meet pretty regularly in the hospital, just playing video games together. Here's Elias's crotch if you're not interested in hearing the synopsis. There's two parts of this video going on. The inappropriate part and then the bookish part here. It's really two videos in one, so you can pick whichever flavor you want.
Okay, wait. Is this even to you?
I think maybe like this part here is a little bit raised higher, but honestly it's not gonna be noticeable. I guess since you cut it, it like has curled up a little bit.
It's okay.
Anyway, their friendship is like a really big deal because again, he has not talked to anybody, and the only person he's really ever talked to since then is the girl that shows up in the gaming room because they bond over their shared love of video games. It has been so long since I have started a book, and I knew pretty much from the beginning that it was gonna be a good book. The way that they talk in their dialogue just flows so naturally, and especially seeing it as kids, you can tell that they're intelligent and precocious. Both characters actually feel like real people. I do like the main girl better just because her relationship with her sister feels real and endearing. Even though her sister does have cancer, it doesn't feel like tragedy porn. They still feel like sisters where they still fight, they still have that awkward kind of tug of war between who gets more attention from their parents and who doesn't. Even with the sad prospects of her dying from cancer, they have an inside joke going on where one of the games that they used to play took place in a historical setting where people died from dysentery, which is basically when they shit their pants with a bunch of blood. So when people ask her why she's in the hospital, the running joke is that my sister is dying from dysentery. We follow them in present day. It takes place 8 years later since they first met and became friends when they were kids, but they hadn't talked since then because some other stuff has happened. However, when they meet again 8 years later, it kind of catapults them back to that time when they were so obsessed with video games and bonded over that. And this whole book is basically a love letter to video games, but I think not just that, but creativity as well. Even though I am not really a gamer, I feel kind of inspired by how passionate they are with making video games. The whole premise here is that they kind of reconnect their friendship and they decide to make a game together. And it feels like such a simple little project for them to make, but it kind of becomes so much bigger because they're so intelligent and so passionate about this kind of stuff. I think any person who considers themselves to be creative or has some kind of creative hobby or passion would find some way to relate to this book. Even when they start brainstorming together and thinking of ideas for the games, it made me relate and be really invested and interested for a lot of what they have to say, especially for the main girl. She has so many unique and interesting ideas. The main guy feels real too because he has other issues going on with his life. Most of the tension comes from his constant health issues ever since he got into a car accident. You see a lot of the way that he has to deal with his everyday life with his disability and not being able to walk around as much, and kind of the frustrations of having to slow down or having to work around other people when they expect him to be there. There was one chapter that was so detailed with his experience dealing with his disability that it made me wonder if the author has had some experience with disability as well, because it was just so personal. It's all the physical and emotional turmoil that he deals with on his own, especially since he doesn't ask help from others, that I don't really consider, because when I'm so used to being in the main girl's head, when we see them as college students and as adults in present day and they're building this whole game enterprise together, I'm more sympathetic with the girl because she's always doing the most work while she's getting the shitty end of the stick. People are giving credit to the guy instead of the girl, even though the guy might not be doing as much work. And so I'm over here thinking, yeah, the guy isn't doing his weight of the work at all. I'm over here being as resentful as the main girl, totally on her side. And then I'll read the next chapter where it goes through his perspective of everything he's been having to deal with, and I'm like, damn, all right. I guess I'll give him a pass since he's going through some shit too. But because of that, I worry that it's gonna lead to some misunderstanding or resentment, especially from the main girl, because she's doing a lot of work. Obviously, there is some inequality going on with the way that they're distributing the work, despite them both being so passionate about it. The more that they work together, the more I fear what conflict that's gonna inevitably happen in their friendship, because I feel like that always happens if you decide to work with your friend. And it makes me nervous because I really like their friendship. It had had such a sweet beginning, and the passion that they have for their games is so pure. And so I'm just worried for the inevitable conflicts that will arise. I'm also worried about the constant health issues that the main guy has. I just feel like now that I'm halfway through, some tragic shit is gonna happen later. It just feels like that kind of book, because the premise seems like it's a light premise, but then you know some emotional shit is gonna happen later. Especially this one line that I highlighted. They were having some lighthearted dialogue, casually talking about death, and then one of the characters says, "You'll never die. And if you ever died, I would just start the game again." And that shit makes me nervous, because I'm like, y'all, let's not talk about dying in a book. That's a little bit leaning too hard into foreshadowing, and I don't want to get into that. However, I really love the connection between video games and life, and how a lot of it reflects each other. So yes, unfortunately, even though death is talked about in relation to video games, they often talk about how when you die in a video game, you can still start over. There's second chances there that you wouldn't necessarily have in real life. There's also the concept of how there are multiple paths that you can take in a video game. What is established pretty early on in the book is that the main guy's mom passed away a long time ago from that car accident. There was this one chapter where it details more about his mom and what it was like growing up with her. There was a really good line that takes place when he's contemplating all the alternate paths that his mom could have taken in terms of her career, in terms of the men that she's met. Maybe there are paths where she would have never met the main guy's dad and ever had a kid, and he wouldn't be born. And there was a really good line. It says, "There are infinite ways his mother doesn't die that night, and only one way she does." And I was like, bitch, you really went there. I think a lot of the writing is emotionally poignant. I'm just pleasantly surprised overall that this book is living up to the hype. The main appeal for me is just the friendship. It's really nice to read a book where there is a guy and a girl who are just friends, and there doesn't need to be any romance that's depicted at all. I'll update you next time I finish the book. Hopefully no one dies, but who knows? I feel like we are going down that route. But in the meantime, I'm gonna go to the concert, and I will film a little bit of what we do. Well, if I am of sober mind, we'll see.
She was playing volleyball. I never miss her phone call. She's got me doing somersaults. I swear to God, I think I felt my heart fall. She likes the way I play the game, but once it gets late and over, there's no peace of mind. Asking me why, I don't wanna lie.
One thing. As I was looking through the footage to edit this vlog, I realized that there was a clip where I had filmed myself updating you from LA in Elias's apartment, telling you my thoughts on Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I finished, but I can no longer find the clip. I think I must have accidentally deleted it. I have no choice but to update you now from here. So something dramatic indeed happened in the second half of the book. I feel like it should have been obvious, but I was just so caught up in the fear of their friendship deteriorating or the main guy dying because he has so many health issues that I had a blind spot for something else. And then I was like, damn, we really going there, huh? I cannot say due to spoilers, but if you read the book, you know. Oh my god. Yeah, that's how dramatic it was. It put me in a chokehold. Like the biggest event that could possibly happen in the book happened. I know why it had to happen, but I have mixed feelings about the events leading up to it happening because those events were clearly there just for the sake of making things more dramatic for that climax of the event. I feel like as a result that made the story feel a little bit more like a soap opera rather than like a grounded story. It's still good though. Like overall, I would rate this book 4 stars. It's not a complete 5 stars stars for me because there were parts that I noticed in the middle and second half where my interest waned. But I still think that the writing was good. I think the characters were well developed. I like that the two central characters are so flawed. And even though they're stubborn to the point where they refuse to communicate with each other, I can understand how these things happen because not everyone can be communicated with their friends all the time. And everyone's going through their own shit and you don't know what the other person's going through. This is why you shouldn't be working with your friends. Don't shit where you eat because that shit will get messy. The biggest complaint that I have about the book is the fact that it had such promise to be completely platonic, but unfortunately one character ends up falling for another character. I don't know if these are actual romantic feelings or if this character was just getting things confused because they're kind of emotionally constipated when it comes to relationships in general. But regardless of whether those feelings were legitimate or not, the fact that they even thought that they were romantic and that the friends could possibly have a romantic future ahead of them, that turned me off completely because I don't think it's necessary. I feel like it was just tossed in there for the sake of adding conflict or drama when we already had plenty of drama because of the messiness of working with one of your best friends. So I do wish that it was completely platonic because now this isn't one of those books where I can tell people like, oh, you should read it because finally a boy and a girl are the two central characters and they're just friends and nobody has romantic feelings for one another. I can't say that because it's not completely true. And it's frustrating because it didn't have to be true in the first place. I was rooting for you. I thought you were different. But then the very dramatic event happened and all of those petty feelings just evaporated because all of a sudden we have more serious shit to figure out. And I think that's why I couldn't predict the dramatic event. I was just too caught up in being annoyed at the romantic developments. The funny thing is I recommended the book to one of my friends, Sarah, who was actually with us in LA. She wanted me to pick her TBR for a video and I picked out this one because I felt like she would like the book. What I did not expect was for her to be in a fucking chokehold from this book. Because she sent me a video clip of herself crying because she read the very dramatic thing that happens later on in the book. And then she was like, fuck you, Cindy, and fuck this author. Her makeup was running and everything. And I just think that's so funny because I didn't shed a single tear while reading the book, but she left the book and she gave it 5 stars. Even if it's not a complete 5 stars, I still think that it could totally be a perfect book for a lot of people. I understand why it won the Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Fiction. I understand why it was the Book of the Month winner of the year. And now I'll send you back to LA.
I'm still need to say more, yeah, probably. Man, I've been working at it like an addict, my friends know. Really bad at I've been, yeah. Go ahead, ask if you wanna know. Don't need to chit-chat when I'm out of road. Take it or leave it, my offer valid till 10. Baby, hit my line if you wanna get it in. Been fine, been bad. Hit my line, you a snack. Like it when you bite back. Oh, take it slow or go fast. I'm down for that.
I am back home from LA, but I wanted to update the 2 books that I have read for the month. The first one is I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. I literally just wanted to read this book because the title is a mood. The group that I went with to Thailand was doing a Secret Santa. We were putting some books on our wish list. My wonderful Secret Santa, Katie, gifted me this book, along with another book that I will talk about in a future reading vlog when I actually read it. But I got one down already. This is a nonfiction book where the author works as a social media director at a publishing house. So on paper, she is successful, but she sees a psychiatrist about her depression to figure out how to sort through her shit. This is a very relatable story. I think I've seen this film before, and that film was my life. She constantly feels down and anxious and self-critical of herself, but also very judgmental of others. Again, I think I've seen this film before. Not just for my life, but tons of other memoirs I've read of bitches who also struggle with mental health. Except this book is a little bit different because most of the format is actually told through dialogue that she recorded during her sessions with her psychiatrist. For a book that tried to be as transparent as possible by showing conversations that she had with her psychiatrist, I felt like a lot of the conversations were actually surface level. We didn't really dig deep into why she was feeling this way, any concrete solutions for how to counteract these things or cope with these things better. A lot of the conversations kind of felt disorganized. The dialogue felt stilted. It didn't feel like people actually talked like this. It didn't feel natural. And I don't know if this is just cultural differences and I'm not able to pick up as much nuance with things because this is just the translation, but it felt very dry. I didn't even feel like I got a sense of the author and what she was struggling with. So much of it was vague and surface level, and I really would have wanted some deeper things to come out of it. Personally, if I had the psychiatrist, I would be side-eyeing her because I wasn't getting anything from the psychiatrist. I was like, damn, how much are you paying? So for example, there is one part where the author was expressing concerns about drinking too much and she wants to stop, and her therapist was giving her advice like, stop going out with friends who drink. Tell yourself that you won't drink so much next time and then follow up on it. And it's like, yeah, no shit. The therapy that I am accustomed to would be trying to figure out why is the author drinking in the first place? What is causing the author to fall into these habits? And why do they feel negatively about it to the point where they want to stop? Because I feel like that would actually bring a long-term solution rather than just being like, don't do this. There was even a point where the author was talking about her anxiety and how she kind of lashes out at other people sometimes. The therapist tells her your anxiety can become a burden to others, which I do not think is the right way to tell someone who is experiencing anxiety to get over that shit. If anything, that would make them more anxious. Like, I can kind of understand what the therapist might be talking about because to an extent, your mental problems can become an issue to other people if you let it be that way. But I'm not getting enough in-depth information from these conversations to see anything that she's pitching that's useful. There was even a part where the author was expressing concern about gaining weight and the therapist was like, really? You don't look like you have. Was there a reason? And I'm like, girl, why was it necessary for you to even say that you don't look like you have gained weight? So I think it might just be like a cultural thing that's really tripping me up because I do know that Koreans do have a very strict beauty standard. Patriarchy and alcoholism can be very normalized over there. Maybe the psychiatrist is a product of that as well, but I don't think that's helpful in guiding someone through their mental health journey. But at the same time, am I also speaking out of my ass because I'm a dumbass American? Even just finishing the book, I was like, I don't know if this girlie is still okay. But I mean, me neither though, so we both going through it. And then the next book that I read was The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. I picked up this book because the other group that I traveled with in Thailand is doing a book club, and this was the first book that we chose. It's a historical drama that's a reimagining of this other tale called The Island of Dr. Moreau. It's set in Mexico during the 19th century. I haven't read The Island of Dr. Moreau, so I came into this blind. All I knew so far was that this was a historical novel. It only got more interesting when we saw that the doctor was experimenting with some shady shit. He creates these hybrids that are designed to just blindly obey their creator. And they're part human, part animal, but they're supposed to be in the background and not be seen by the public eye because otherwise they would be seen as monsters and just be further pushed away by society. So the main character is the daughter of the doctor, and girlie has just been living with her head under the sand and she doesn't know what the fuck is going on. Like, she has grown up with some of these hybrids and she's friends with them and she gets along with them, but she doesn't really understand the stakes that are involved here or why they're different or why they shouldn't be seen among normal humans. And then there's this other guy that lives with the doctor. He becomes the doctor's assistant. He and the main girl kind of have this close relationship. There is a little bit of a one-sided romance going on, and that one I thought might be kind of juicy because I do love a little bit of yearning, especially since there are these two new guys that show up. They are these rich men who want to know more about these experiments, and then one of the guys falls for the main girl, which is an easy way to set up a marriage between them since the main girl doesn't really know shit about the real world. So it's just easy to set her up with some rich dude. But then the main guy has problems with that because he's like, I don't think this guy is good for you. And he is right because the rich guy is like a scumbag, but part of it is also because of jealousy too. So he kind of acts out about it. Once the rich assholes entered the picture, I was interested in seeing how shit was gonna hit the fan. We got these monsters that shouldn't be exposed, that they're trying to keep a secret, and we got a love triangle. That is when the story picked up for me. Of course, we're gonna have to ignore the age difference going on here because the main guy technically met the main girl when she was underage. Leonardo DiCaprio is calling right now, but I think because it is a one-sided romance and the author didn't go forward with it, I guess the lack of commitment is fine. It wasn't really about the romance, but I don't even know what it was about. It was nominated for Goodreads Best Science Fiction, but it wasn't really even sci-fi. It was very light sci-fi because you don't know much about how these monsters were made in the first place. It is glossed over. You just know that Doctor just has a hard-on for being the one in power. And then there's the typical theme about how maybe he's the actual monster and it's like, okay, frick Frankenstein. Pack it up. I've seen your type before. Give me something different. I'm gonna go with 3.5 stars for this one. I liked it more than the previous book because I was engaged throughout the story. However, when I look back on the entire novel as a whole, I definitely feel like there were so many more opportunities for the plot to have more drama and stakes. But the writing is still good. I think the author has a very lovely and atmospheric writing style. I just wish that the story was not as simple and straightforward. It felt like the bones of a story and we could have gotten way more. What I am noticing based on reading Mexican Gothic and now this book, I feel like the author kind of has this bias for a very specific couple dynamic, which is the main girl being a little bit more high status and maybe she's a little bit more naive of the world, but she has her spunk. So she'll talk back to the love interest if need be. And then the love interest is usually some loser, but you kind of want to root for him anyway. Because the main guy, he was kind of a loser. Like the writing kept on emphasizing how much he had a drinking problem. And he also would get into the stages of self-loathing because he does have a lot of like internal issues going on. It's kind of like a similar dynamic to Mexican Gothic because the main guy was also a loser who was also described as ugly a lot of times throughout the book. And he was also of lower status too. So I don't know, we're 2 for 2 so far. I think this is a very common couple dynamic going on. I don't mind it. I fuck with it too. At least this guy wasn't described as ugly. I did see some artwork though of the characters and then I was like, damn, no wonder the main girl didn't like you back. Those are the updates for the books I read. Go ahead and unsubscribe from my channel and goodbye.
You catch me looking 7 digits tonight. Let me get it how I get it, alright.